Hello, everybody, and welcome to our live stream. My name is Erika Tyler-John, and today we're going to be solving 6 hard GMAT verbal questions with me, 100 percentile score. A little bit about me. So I have been a GMAT and specifically, more broadly, a test prep expert for over a decade. I have tutored a lot of students. I've taught a lot of classes. I've written a lot of test prep content, worked on a lot of test prep products, et cetera, et cetera. You might recognize me from YouTube, where I have done a number of pretty popular videos and live streams. These days, you can find me on the Target Test Prep YouTube channel. I'm here today representing Target Test Prep. And you can see me sometimes on GMAT Club. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about when you can see me here on the GMAT Club channel in the near future. So we are talking about verbal questions today. What makes verbal questions hard? We're solving 6 of them today, but what's going to make them difficult? Well, a lot of people expect that what is going to make verbal questions difficult is the question types, right? They are expecting the weird ones. They're expecting paradox on critical reasoning. They're expecting mimic the reasoning, right? Where you have to find a new argument that takes the structure of the original argument. They're expecting critical reasoning in reading comprehension. They're expecting application type questions and reading comprehension. They're expecting things that do not come up very frequently and that can be scary when they do. They're also expecting, okay, maybe it's not the question type that's the real weird thing. It's the passage topic that's the real weird thing. They're expecting things that are overly technical that they benefit from outside knowledge on. Specifically, they're expecting science is one that a lot of people are nervous about. But the reality is that the hardest verbal questions require challenging critical thinking across question types, across passage topics. So yes, there will be hard questions that are weird, weird question types. And yes, there will be hard questions that deal with weird, overly technical passage topics. But a lot of them are going to be really bog standard question types. We're talking strengthen, weaken, inference on critical reasoning. We're talking primary purpose, structure, detail on reading comprehension. And these question types are going to be on a variety of passage topics. So yes, sure, we'll see science, but we'll also see business, right? Which for business school candidates makes a lot of sense. We'll see more general, more accessible topics, but still very hard questions. So what are we going to do today? Today, we are going to solve 6 GMAT verbal questions. I have 2 bonus ones. I don't think we're going to get to them, but we have them just in case. All of these verbal questions are classified as hard in the Target Test Prep program, which means they were designed with the intention of being the most difficult questions in that program. 4 of these questions are in the top 20 most missed Target Test Prep verbal questions. So this means that of all the questions, and right, there's 4,000 plus questions in the Target Test Prep program. Of all those questions, 4 are in the top 20 most missed verbal ones. So the ones that people get wrong the most. Couldn't do all 6 because of the nature of verbal passages, but I'll talk about where you can find more hard reading comprehension questions. In today's questions, we have the number 1 most missed critical reasoning question, so the question that the most Target Test Prep students get wrong, and the number 2 most missed reading comprehension question. So the second one. I'll tell you where to find the number 1 later in this video. There's going to be no weird question types. These are all very basic, very standard question types, and none of the passages are going to be overly technical. There will be science, but nothing that's super hard science. We're talking high school level biology. See how many of these you can get right. See if you can get all 6. Oh, and then like I mentioned, this is part of a series. There was a previous live stream that was focused on hard quant questions. The link for that is in the description of this video. We solve 9 hard quant questions. That was a lot of questions. That one's really fun. If you haven't seen it, go check that out. The verbal part is today. Thanks for being here. And then Data Insights, we have one coming up on June 4th. So set a reminder on your calendar. The event's not on YouTube yet, but if you're subscribed to GMAT Club, you should see that. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing you at that one too. But for now, we'll get started with our first critical reasoning question. Now, this one is science. This is as challenging as the passage topics are going to get. Let's go ahead and give this one about 2 minutes. Hopefully that's going to be enough time. Give it a go, and then we'll try it together. When you have your answer, if you're brave, go ahead and put it in the chat. All right, last chance to pop an answer in the chat if you've got one. Ooh, this one's divisive. Okay, let's go ahead and get going. So the process that I'm going to use here, I'm going to start with the question stem. You don't have to, but on critical reasoning, I like to start with the question stem just so I know what I'm getting into. For instance, if I have an inference question, I might not be expecting a conclusion. If I have a strength and weaken assumption, I am expecting a conclusion. So I'm just going to go ahead and give it a look just so I know what I'm dealing with. Okay, one second. Turn on my pen. Okay. Which of the following, if true, best supports biologists' more recent conclusion about white sharks? In the chat, what type of question do you think this is? What question type is this? Which of the following, if true, best supports biologists' more recent conclusion about white sharks? What question type are we working with here? Yeah, nice job. So this is a strengthen question. So which of the following, so of the answer choices, supports the conclusion above? So we have direction of support going up. So we are strengthening an above conclusion. Okay, great. So this is a pretty, again, bog standard question type. Okay, so we are going to be looking for an argument that has premises and a conclusion, and there's going to be some kind of gap in there, some kind of unstated assumption that is it makes the argument weaker than it could be, and we are looking for something that strengthens it. We can go as far as we want, we can go as extreme as we want. We just want to make the argument better. We want to make the conclusion stronger. Okay, Let's go ahead and jump into this passage. For some time, biologists were sure. Okay, so pausing for a second. A strategy that I'm going to use throughout this is I'm going to read actively. I am going to pause as I read at punctuation, but also as soon as I have a new piece of information. And I'm going to process that to make sure that I'm really understanding the passage before I move on to the answer choices. I do not want to have to come back and reread. I do not want to go into my answer choices without really understanding what's going on in my passage. So I'm stopping here. For some time, biologists were sure. This tells me that this is something that they thought in the past. This was a previous conclusion that they were sure of. They aren't anymore. Okay. They were sure that white sharks were not migratory animals and that such sharks would spend their entire lives in the same area of ocean, ranging no more than a few hundred miles in any direction. Okay, stop at the end of this period. Okay, so this was a previous conclusion. We can infer that they probably don't think this anymore. Okay, this conclusion, it was a conclusion, was based. Okay, it was based in part on the fact. So we know that this is a premise coming up for the previous conclusion, right? Not a current conclusion, but a previous conclusion. This conclusion was based in part on the fact that open oceans lack sources of food that sharks would need to sustain themselves during long open ocean swims, during which a shark could easily burn hundreds of thousands of calories. Okay, stop. So they thought in the past sharks were not migratory because there wouldn't be any food in the open ocean that they could eat, right? They need food. Okay, that makes sense. However, okay, so maybe we are getting a contrasting new conclusion. However, recently, okay, we're in the present, biologists have concluded, this is the new conclusion, that white sharks are actually migratory, regularly traveling great distances, often thousands of miles through the oceans. Okay, stopping again. So that's my argument. Notice, I have a new conclusion. I have an old conclusion and I have premise that supports the old conclusion. I have no premise that supports the new conclusion. So there is a lot of opportunity to strengthen because at this point, I have no idea why scientists think that now. So I am looking for something that would indicate, okay, now I have support for white sharks are migratory. Okay, let's go into our answer choices. And we're going to see how we do. Okay. We had a lot of different answers in the chat. I'm really excited to go through this one. Okay. A, the population density of seals and sea lions, both of which are primary prey for white sharks, rises and falls in different areas of the oceans across seasons. Okay. Let's go through this one because this one I think is kind of sneaky. So I think when a lot of people see this one, they go, well, maybe this indicates that in the open ocean, there could be seals and sea lions. It rises and falls, right? So if there are sea lions or seals in the open ocean at some point, then sharks would be able to migrate because there would be a food source, right? And that seems logical. However, it goes against everything we know about critical reasoning. In critical reasoning, when a premise is stated, we take it as fact. And in fact, if we look at the argument based in part on the fact that open oceans lack sources of food that sharks would need to sustain themselves during long open ocean swims. So if A is suggesting that the open ocean does, in fact, at some time have seals and sea lions, we are saying that the premise that was stated as fact in our argument is false. We can't do that. That is not allowed. Now, if the argument said, this conclusion was based on the conjecture that likely the open oceans lacked sources of food, or it was based on the previous understanding, something to indicate that it wasn't actually true. And then the answer choice says, we've recently discovered that actually seals and sea lions sometimes do live in the open ocean. Okay, that's fine because we're not actually going against the passage. We're saying we did think that, but it's not true anymore. This answer choice is actively going against the passage if it's suggesting something about open oceans. And if it's not suggesting something about open oceans, what relevance does it have, right? Why is this relevant here? It doesn't tell me anything about sharks and their migration. So this answer is not correct. Okay, moving on to B. Using DNA analysis, biologists determined that white sharks living in the Mediterranean are more closely related to those living off Australia than to their geographically closer cousins in the Atlantic. I think some folks also picked this one. Let's talk about this one. So the reasoning for this one would be, okay, hey, these sharks are closely related to sharks that live far, far away, more closely related to the sharks that live far, far away than the sharks that live quite close to them. So this might suggest, hey, that they are migrating, right? And that's how they're closely related. But that's kind of a stretch, right? Because maybe they're closely related due to convergent evolution. Maybe they're closely related because there was some ancient shark that used to migrate, right? This could be years and years and years and years and years and years and years ago that this genetic similarity occurred. And maybe they don't migrate anymore. This doesn't tell me anything about present day sharks, present day white sharks, and whether they migrate. It maybe suggests that at some point there was migration, but it's too far. Now, if we aren't totally sure, we could give this one a maybe and we could come back to it, but I feel pretty confident this is not the one. All right, moving on to C. This one was popular. White sharks that inhabit areas in which food sources go through cycles of scarcity and abundance would benefit from being able to migrate long distances. All right. So this one supports the idea that it would be good for white sharks to migrate, right? And maybe it's kind of similar to A in that regard. Maybe that's what some folks think is going on with A, right? That we're going, hey, there's less food in some places, so they need to migrate for more food. And that's what's going on in C. Does that support the conclusion that they do migrate? This supports the conclusion that it would be beneficial for them to migrate, but does that mean that they do? Right? There are a lot of things that are beneficial that we don't do. There's a lot of things that would be beneficial for animals to do that they don't do. We want something that supports that they do migrate. Not that it would be good if they did. Does that make sense? It'd be great for humans if our knees didn't blow out. It would be great for a lot of animals if they could eat more diverse food sources than they do. It would be great for, and kind of the list goes on, right? There are all sorts of things that would benefit animals that just don't happen. Right? So this doesn't actually support what we need it to, but it can be kind of convincing. So remember, we are looking for they are migratory, not that it would be good if they were. Okay, D. Skeletons of female white sharks that have been determined to have lived in the waters off of South Africa have been found almost 11,000 kilometers away, thousands of kilometers in the waters off Australia. Okay, looking back at our argument, remember we saw that the new conclusion is that they traveled often thousands of miles as opposed to the previous conclusion, which was that they traveled no more than a few hundred miles, right? So these skeletons are found thousands of miles away. Okay, how did the skeletons get thousands of miles away? All right, maybe the ocean current was so strong that it dragged them 11,000, not miles, kilometers away, right? A really, 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 really far way away. Or maybe it got picked up on a boat or on a whale or something very strange. But do you see how that's the reach? What's the most likely reason that sharks, current sharks, not ancient sharks, current sharks have been found thousands of miles away? It's that they migrated. This is strong support because I don't have to leap to figure out how current day shark skeletons were found far away. The most likely cause is that the sharks who started off in South Africa went to Australia. This is the strongest support for our conclusion. This one's tough. Let's confirm by looking at E. White sharks inhabit a wide range of Earth's oceans and seas, from the east coast of the United States to the southern oceans off Australia. This one's just irrelevant. What does it matter where they live? It doesn't indicate that they migrate. It just indicates that there are multiple groups. So this one is not our answer. I don't think anyone picked this one. So takeaway on this one, we need to spend some time identifying the conclusion that we are strengthening. What is it that we're trying to strengthen? We're not trying to strengthen that it would be a good idea if they were migratory. We're trying to strengthen that they are actively, currently migratory, regularly traveling great distances, often thousands of miles through the ocean. And we need to spend some time looking at our answer choices and their implications. Often we need to spend a little bit more time with these than on easier questions. Okay. That was our first one. Let's try the second one. And I'm seeing some questions in this one. We might be able to come back to them at the end, but we do have to move on to our second question. Let's give this one 2 minutes again. Good luck. Okay, answers in the chat. It's okay to put in a guess. These are hard. Okay, you can go ahead and pop those in the chat as we go. Let's go ahead and identify our question type. The statements above, if true, most strongly support which of the following? Okay. In the chat, what question type do you think we have here? The statements above, if true, most strongly support which of the following? I'm seeing a couple answers here. So you might think, right, our previous question, we had the word supports, right? And it was a strengthen question. We see the word support here. We might think, hey, this is another strengthen question. But it's not. Because in the previous question, our error of support went up, right? The following statements support the above conclusion. Here, the statements above most strongly support which of the following? The arrow of support goes down. This is an inference question. All right. This is a question where we are looking for something that we can infer from the above, which is going to change our approach on this question. Yeah, I know it's tricky. I did kind of a trick question there. So if you got caught by it, that's okay. But this is something that we want to be really, really careful of, because this is something that can miss us the whole question that happens right at the very, very beginning. So be so careful with language. Strength and inference are very, very close. Assumption is also quite close. So be so careful to identify the right question so you know what we're doing here. So instead of finding something that is potentially extreme that is going to strengthen the above, we are looking for something that we can draw as a conclusion, something that's going to be more reserved, potentially something that we are more confident is going to be true based on the passage. Okay, let's go ahead and jump on in. Because students who are significantly older than average for their grade levels in grade school are constantly surrounded by younger students who are not as far along in their development as the older students. Okay, pause. I saw the word because. When I have because at the beginning of a sentence, it means I have a premise, and what's going to come after the comma is going to be potentially a conclusion or something that is because of, as a result of the thing that follows the because. So this first bit is our premise. So because students who are older than average are constantly surrounded by younger students, students who are significantly older than average for their grade levels in grade school tend to become more self-confident. Okay, so if you are significantly older than average for your grade levels in grade school, you tend to become more self-confident than other students. Okay, great. Got that. The more self-confident people are, the more likely they are to attend college. Okay, so we are seeing 3 not causal, but correlated things, right? If you are older than average, you are more likely to be self-confident, which makes you more likely to attend college. So we can infer from this that if you are older than average for your grade levels in grade school, you are more likely to attend college. If an answer choice said that would be a great answer. I really doubt that that's what one of the answers is going to say, because this is a hard question. So we're going to look for something along those lines. But going in, we know if you are significantly older than average for your grade level, you are more likely to attend college. Okay, let's go into our answer choices. We are looking for something, again, that we can infer, something that we are confident is true. Okay. The proportion of college students significantly older than average for their classes will likely be greater than the proportion of grade school students significantly older than average for their grades. Okay, I'm going to look at the answer choices that everyone put in here. We're going to come back to A. Just for fun. We're going to come back to this one. I'm going to go on to B, and I want to go through some of the answers that were more popular. The academic performance in grade school of students who are significantly older than average for their grade levels in grade school will typically be higher than average. Okay, a couple people picked this one. Did this passage say anything about academic performance? No. It said something about being older. It talked about being more self-confident, and it talked about attending college. There is nothing in here about academic performance. This is not relevant. This is an assumption that an unrelated thing is relevant. So maybe we're thinking, oh, if they're more self-confident, if they're more likely to attend college, they're likely to be academically better performing, but we don't know that. Not safe. It is not strongly supported. Okay, moving on to C. People who are younger than average for their grade levels in grade school are less likely to go on to attend college than the average person. Do we know anything about people who are younger than average from this passage? No, we don't. We know that if you are wrong place. We know that if you are older, you are more likely to attend college than average, but we don't know about younger, right? Maybe the relationship here is that the oldest students are the most likely to attend college. The youngest students, maybe they've had to prove more, they've had to work harder due to being younger, and so they're more likely to attend than the average. So we know about let's take a look really quickly. Students who are significantly older than average are constantly they are more self-confident than other students. Okay, so we know that older students are more self-confident than other students in general, right? So that is young and average, right? And so they are more likely to attend college than folks who are young and average combined. But how does young compare to average? We don't actually know. So a lot of folks, this is kind of like the issue that folks see with the word non-negative, right? People assume that the opposite of negative is positive, but actually there's this whole other category, zero, right? This is kind of a similar thing where folks are going, okay, the opposite of older is younger. That's not the case. The opposite of older here is average and younger. We don't know how younger and average relate to each other. So this one is not our answer either. This one was pretty popular. If you see words in your answer choice that you have not seen before in your passage, look at them really, really closely, because younger than average, we've not seen. Careful. Okay. Given two applicants with similar academic records but different levels of self-confidence, a college is more likely to admit the more self-confident applicant. There is one word in D that we have not seen before in this passage and that we should be really skeptical of. Does anyone know what that word is in answer choice D? In the chat. Yeah, admit. We know that more self-confident people are more likely to attend. Does that mean that they are more likely to be admitted? No. It could be that their level of self-confidence is causing them to apply to more schools, and so then it's just a numbers game. It's not that they're more likely to be admitted, it's that they are just applying to more, and so even maybe they're getting admitted less frequently, but they have a higher chance because they're applying to more schools. Or maybe because they're more self-confident, if they get admitted, they're like, yes, I'm going to go. But someone who's less self-confident, maybe if they have an admittance, they don't go, right? Because they're not confident that they're going to do well in college. There's all sorts of other reasons here, right? That this could not be true other than just admission. So we need to be really, really careful. This is a classic one. This is, again, precision in language. So we didn't know about younger than average. We didn't know about academic performance, and we don't know about whether they're admitted. We just know that whether they attend. Another tricky one. Ruling out D. Okay, moving on to E. In some cases, students who are significantly older than average for their grades were entered into school late by parents hoping to improve the student's chances of attending college. Let's see, did anyone pick this one? Okay, no one picked this one. Thank goodness. This is actually a reasonably popular answer choice in the Target Test Prep program, but it is not true. This one I could see being potentially an answer for a strengthen question, but it's not a strengthen question, it's an inference. And can we conclude that parents are doing these things to try to get their students into college? This is a huge, huge reach. I mean, it seems like if this is true, maybe parents would do that. It would be good logic for them to do that, but it's not a good inference. It supports it as a course of action, but it doesn't support it as an inference. This is not our answer, which means it's gotta be A, but not a lot of people picked this one. And I think it's because this one is hard to interpret. I think a lot of people look at this one and they go, what? They are confused by it. They don't know how to parse it because it's surprisingly math in a verbal question. Let's take a look at this one. The proportion of college students significantly older than average for their classes will likely be greater than the proportion of grade school students significantly older than average for their grades. Okay, let's go ahead and look at some examples. Let's do what we might do in a quant question and pick some numbers. So if we are looking at a ratio of older students to all students, okay? Let's say in grade school, there are 20 total students in a class. And of those 20 students, 5 of them are older than average. Okay, now let's say they go on to college. Of all the students, let's say 10 go on to college. About half, that's pretty good, right? Of these older students, we know that they are more self-confident, they are more likely to attend college. Let's say that 4 of them go on to attend college. Well, here we have, okay, in grade school, we have 5 over 20. And in college, we have 4 over 10, which if we multiply by 2 over 2 is 8 over 20. We see that in college, this is a higher proportion. Because more of the older students go on to college compared to overall students, that proportion is inflated in college. So the proportion of college students significantly older than average for their classes is likely to be greater than in grade school. This is our correct answer. Tricky. So, takeaway on this one, don't get overwhelmed by an answer choice just because you don't know what it means. Just because you don't know what it means doesn't mean it's wrong. That's a common trap to fall into. So a move that can help is if you're looking at an answer and you're going, what? Don't feel the need to pick it or rule it out. Just give it a maybe. Say, I'll come back. And then move on to some of the other answer choices and see if you can parse these other ones. Now, if you go through all of the answer choices and you can't parse any of them, maybe it's time to say goodbye to this question, make a guess and move on, because you might be burning your time unnecessarily. But if you go through a first pass and you've eliminated most of them, then you still have a good shot. Go back in on the ones that you were struggling with to interpret and give it another go. Okay. Let's go ahead and try our third and final critical reasoning question. This is the number 1 most missed critical reasoning question in the entire test prep program. Go ahead and give it a go. 2 minutes. Answer in the chat when you think you've got it. Okay, answers in the chat if you think you got it. And to be fair, I'm not giving you guys a lot of time on these. These are challenging. On test day, you might be spending more like 3 minutes on a question like this. Okay. All right. Identifying a question type. I saw someone in the chat say this is an inference question, and they are correct. If the above is true, which of the following must also be true? So our arrow of support goes down. We are looking again for something that, well, this one even says must also be true. So this is something we know for sure, 100%. There is no way it's not true. That is a high bar. All right. So we want to be super, 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 super critical of these to try to figure out, is there any case where this could not be true? And then if it could not be true in a single case, we eliminate it. Okay, let's hit the passage. Whereas earlier, techno-style phones required the phone owner's thumbprint for gaining access to the phones, last year's model required the owner's face. Okay, pause. These are both past models. We have the old model and we have the old last year model. So first was thumbprint, then face. Okay, however, because in some cases, the faces of identical twins were similar enough that one twin could unlock the other twin's phone. Okay, pause. This is an issue with last year's model, right? The faces maybe not enough. TechnoStyle redesigned their phones so that the standard unlocking procedure now requires the owner's thumbprint and face. Okay, so it used to be just thumbprint, then it used to be just face. Now it's thumbprint and face. Great. As a result, no identical twins have succeeded in unlocking their twins' latest model techno-style phones. Okay, so used to be thumbprint. They made it the face. Some identical twins could unlock it. They made it the thumbprint and the face. And so far, no identical twins have unlocked the phones that require the thumbprint and the face. Okay, let's take a look at the answer choices, and we're going to think precision and language on these. Okay, so first, pausing here, we've noted that with inference questions, generally things that are more vague are more likely to be true. Things that are more extreme are less likely to be true because, again, they have a higher bar. That does not mean they aren't true, it just means they're held to a higher bar. So this word only, we're going to go, that's the place to attack. Only identical twins were able to gain unauthorized access to phones of the model offered by TechnoStyle last year. There's one other thing to attack here, which is this phrase, unauthorized access, which we actually haven't seen before. That wasn't really in the passage. We talked about unlocking by face and by thumbprint. But unauthorized access is kind of a broad term. Let's see, did folks pick this one? We had a couple of folks who picked this one. What else could unauthorized access mean? Could it mean something other than unlocking with a face or a thumbprint? Could it mean jailbreaking it? Could it mean classic black screen with green text, hacking it, Like there are all sorts of ways to gain unauthorized access to phones. Maybe it's having the person, forcing them to unlock the phone and then taking it from them. That's also gaining unauthorized access. Do only identical twins have the ability to do this? No, anyone can do that. All right, so no, this is possible. It's possible that only identical twins gained access, but other people could have. So this is not a must also be true. Okay, moving on to B, and now we kind of have the pieces to unlock this one. All right, so we're thinking about unauthorized access as a whole. Okay, fewer people, well, that's kind of vague. That's nice. Fewer will gain unauthorized access, there's that phrase again, to the latest model phones from TechnoStyle that gained unauthorized access to previous TechnoStyle phones. Well, again, unauthorized access is very, very broad. Maybe there are other security issues with this phone that weren't in previous models. Or maybe the phone is just a lot more popular. There's a lot more of them than there used to be. And so just by, again, numbers game, more people are going to be able to gain unauthorized access because there's more phones. Again, not necessarily true, even though it has this nice vague language. Okay, C. Any identical twins who have gained unauthorized access, to their twins' phones have not done so by using the standard unlocking procedure if the phones were of the latest techno-style model. Okay, so pausing. That word any, right, might make us a little bit nervous, right? Any identical twins? That's pretty broad. But then it has unauthorized access in the same sentence as unlocking. Now, unlocking is in the passage. That's what it's about. We know no identical twins have unlocked their twins' phones. But have they gained unauthorized access? Oh, I don't know. Maybe one of those twins is a hacker, you know? We don't know that. So any identical twins who have gained unauthorized access, that could be possible, to their twins' phones have not done so by using the standard unlocking procedure. Well, yeah, we know that. They cannot unlock the phones with just a thumbprint in the face, or they have not. We have this information. They have not succeeded. No identical twins have succeeded. So if they have accessed the phones, it wasn't by unlocking. C is our correct answer. Now, other people picked D and E. Let's figure out why those are not correct. TechnoStyle's latest model phones are the phones to which it is the most difficult to gain unauthorized access. Well, again, that phrase, who knows about any other type of unauthorized access. But also the phones, we know how they compare unlocking wise to other TechnoStyle model phones, but what about other brands? We have no idea about other brands of phones. Not our answer. E, though, is really tempting, and a lot of people picked this one. No people who are identical twins share the same thumbprint with their twins. Okay, so a lot of folks will go, okay, no, yeah, pretty strong language, but we know from the last sentence, no identical twins have succeeded in unlocking their latest, the latest techno-style phones, which must mean that they don't have the same thumbprint. So this feels true, right? But this last sentence says no identical twins have succeeded so far. Does that mean no identical twins could succeed? It just means that the subset who've tried have not succeeded. Maybe there is a pair of identical twins in some remote region who have not seen a techno-style phone who do have the same thumbprint. They just haven't tried. So can we infer this? This one's really close. This one's really close, but there is a case in which it could not be true. Inference must be true is a really high bar. We need to look for the answer that cannot be argued. And that's C. That one's nasty. There is a reason this is the most missed critical reasoning question in Target Test Prep. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and move on. We might be able to come back at the end, but we have not a lot of time to move on to reading comprehension. Okay, now, like I mentioned, this passage that we're about to do is not the hardest in the entire Target Test Prep program. The hardest reading comprehension passage in the Target Test Prep program with the hardest questions, 3 in the top 20 most missed, is this one in this video that I did on the Target Test Prep GMAT channel. I highly recommend checking this one out. It's about 30 minutes, but we go through the passage in depth, talk through active reading strategies, and we do these 3 very hard questions. I highly recommend it if maybe the one today is not hard enough for you. Give this one a go. But we're going to go ahead and do this one together. And we are going to, we're going to go through the passage together, and then we'll do the questions. We're going to try to go quickly. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and break it down. Like with critical reasoning, we are going to do, we are going to do active reading strategies. Okay, paragraph 1. While Neanderthals have been commonly believed to have been less cognitively advanced, okay, paused. They have been commonly believed. Okay, and while. This is suggesting that this is something that we previously thought was true, but maybe we don't think is true anymore. So I am going into this with that expectation. Neanderthals have been commonly believed to have been less cognitively advanced than the other ancestors of modern humans who inhabited Eurasia along with the Neanderthals, comma. Okay, now we're looking for the contrast. Recent, so now we are contrasting the past to the present, archaeological work has yielded multiple discoveries indicating that this perception, right, the thing that was previously believed that they're less cognitively advanced of Neanderthals is inaccurate. Okay, so pausing. We used to think Neanderthals were less cognitively advanced. Now we think that's inaccurate. Among these discoveries, all right, that's the multiple discoveries from before, is evidence indicating that Neanderthals produced pitch for the purpose of making tools. Okay, so there is evidence, there are multiple discoveries supporting the idea that maybe they aren't less cognitively advanced, and one of them is this idea of producing pitch. Okay, this discovery, producing pitch, is particularly interesting. Okay, it looks like we're homing in on producing pitch. That seems like it's going to be maybe the topic of our passage, because the production of pitch from bark requires heating the bark to a high temperature, but pitch quickly burns if exposed to fire. Okay, maybe we don't totally get why that's so interesting, but apparently it's interesting. Okay, therefore, conclusion. This is conclusion language. Many, coming back to this, archaeologists have concluded, okay, conclusion language, that in order to produce pitch, Neanderthals must have been significantly cognitively advanced to develop a sophisticated method of heating bark to produce pitch without burning the pitch. Okay, got it. So it's without burning the pitch. That's what makes it more advanced, more sophisticated. Okay, pausing here. So first thing, this is science, all right, but it is biology. So far, it doesn't seem super out of the bounds of difficulty. So like we mentioned, hard questions can come with more challenging passage topics. So far, this one doesn't seem to be the hardest science passage in the world. The one in that video that I shared, that one is pretty hard. So check that one out if you want a more challenging one. Okay, now at the end of a passage, excuse me, at the end of a paragraph, I like to pause and just do a quick recap of the structure of the paragraph and what I learned from it. So used to think they were less cognitively advanced. Maybe we don't think that anymore. There were multiple discoveries, and one of them is this pitch to make tools. It suggests that they were actually pretty advanced. However, there's one word here that I want to call out, which is this word many. Therefore, many archaeologists have concluded this. Why would they say that? Unless they were going to go against it. Maybe some other archaeologists don't think this is true. So we might actually have one more flip-flop in us. Are they actually more cognitively advanced? Are they actually are they not less cognitively advanced? I don't know. Let's go into our next paragraph. Now, notice this is the first part of the second paragraph. I just couldn't fit all of it on the slide. So this is just part one of the second paragraph. And it starts with the word however. Just like we thought, that word many suggested that we were going to flip-flop again. However, recent experiments have generated evidence that serves to call this conclusion into question. So this conclusion, that's that they are sufficiently cognitively advanced. Maybe we're going, I don't actually know that that's true. Interesting. To investigate possible methods of producing pitch, a group of researchers, okay, pausing. We are getting an experimental design passage. This is a classic one. We are going to describe some sort of experiment, and the results of it are going to support or hopefully some sort of theory or go against some sort of theory. So we can expect here that we are going to get a pretty long description of an experiment. Okay, so bearing that in mind, to investigate possible methods of producing pitch, a group of researchers burned birch bark, which would have been common in forests inhabited by Neanderthals, in a variety of situations. Okay, so our experiment is starting here. This is hopefully going to be premise, evidence for some sort of conclusion, potentially a conclusion that calls the previous conclusion into question. Okay, we can probably read through this experiment relatively quickly because it's the conclusion that we care about a little bit more. Okay. In most of these situations, the burning of the bark produced no usable pitch. However, the researchers found that when birch bark was burned near a vertical stone surface, pitch was deposited on the stone, and that if continued for a few hours, the process resulted in the production of a significant quantity of pitch. Okay, so they were able to produce pitch. This is the experiment. it is continuing on to the second part of the passage. Then, continuation. To determine whether the pitch produced in this way could have been effectively used in tool production, the researchers scraped the pitch from the stone and used it in the creation of tools that resembled tools believed to have been used by Neanderthals. These tools were then tested. This is still experiment, all right? We're still going. They were then tested for durability through repeated use, after which they remained in good condition. Positive. A result, okay, are we getting to a conclusion? Indicating that pitch produced via the use of the simple approach of burning bark near a stone surface is suitable for the creation of tools. Okay. That is our experiment. It was pretty long, and we are getting into a conclusion. All right. We have shown that pitch produced by a simple approach, right? This is in contrast to sophisticated, advanced, the language that we saw previously, was able to create tools. Since premise language, that means that after this comma, we are getting a conclusion. Since Neanderthals' routine use of fire likely commonly involved burning of birch bark near a vertical stone surface, it is clear, conclusion language, that development by Neanderthals of an effective method of pitch production may have occurred accidentally rather than required advanced cognition. This is our conclusion. And it goes against what many archaeologists thought in the first paragraph. So, bringing it home. In our second paragraph, we went against the first paragraph. We said, actually, maybe this is not a foregone conclusion. Specifically, this pitch thing, I don't know. They do an experiment. It says maybe it was accidental. It was pretty simple. This is routine. This is common. So it does not support this one, the idea that Neanderthals had advanced cognition. At this point, I like to do a summary of my whole passage. And here, I would summarize this one to say, pitch production does not support advanced cognition in Neanderthals. And that is specifically because of the experimental evidence. The experimental evidence indicates that pitch production does not support advanced cognition in Neanderthals. All right, so that is the process that we go through with the passage before we go into the questions. It took a while, right? And we haven't looked at the questions. We haven't looked at any question stems, but this is what's going to help us have a good foundation for our questions, which is why I'm only going to give you 1 minute per question on these. Let's start with primary purpose. This is the hardest one. 1 minute, answer in the chat. Okay, that's a minute. Go ahead and throw your answers in the chat. And I know we're at time. We're going to go a little bit over, but these last couple of questions are going to go pretty quick. Okay. We've got a few different answers. Let's take a look at this one together. Okay, we have a primary purpose question. We are looking for What is the primary purpose of the passage? Now, with these, a lot of the answers are going to be very, very close to the actual primary purpose. We need to be careful. So we did a summary. The primary purpose is going to be pretty close to this summary. So in our summary, we had an experiment that indicated that pitch production specifically does not support the idea of advanced cognition in Neanderthals. So that's what we're going into this with. Our answer should align with that. Okay, A, a lot of people picked this one. Compare the evidence for and against the conclusion that Neanderthals were significantly cognitively advanced. Compare the evidence for and against. Was that what this passage was doing? Was it comparing? Was it equal? Was it going, oh, we don't know, maybe yes, maybe no? No, that's not what this passage was doing. This passage was saying pitch does not support this conclusion. This answer is too even-handed. That's not what it's doing. It is saying pitch does not support. Got to be careful. All right, B. I'm going to skip B. We're going to come back to this one. We're going to do C because this is a very popular answer. Demonstrate that Neanderthals were not as cognitively advanced as other ancestors of modern humans living in Eurasia along with the Neanderthals. A lot of people like this one because we're going, yes, right? That was our summary. It does not support advanced cognition. But specifically, this was about pitch production. Are we saying that we are demonstrating conclusively Neanderthals are not as cognitively advanced as other ancestors? No, we are indicating that there is one thing that we were using as evidence potentially that they were cognitively advanced that does not actually support this. This is too strong. Oof, okay. So A was not strong enough. C is too strong. D, outline the method used by Neanderthals to produce pitch for the purpose of making tools. I don't think anybody picked this one, which is great because yes, that's some of what happens in the experiment, but it's not the overall purpose of the passage. Moving on to E, present experimental results that support the belief that Neanderthals were as cognitively advanced. Did anybody pick this one? Let me check. Okay, good. Some people pick this one because it's got all the right language, but is actually the opposite of what we're looking for. No, the experimental results do not support that belief. So we're back to B. Provide information indicating that the implications of Neanderthals' production of pitch are different from what some people believe them to be. Notice here that there's a lot of vague language that we have to interpret. We have to figure out what all of these kind of abstract terms are referring to. All right, so information indicating that the implications of Neanderthals' production of pitch. Okay, so what are the implications of Neanderthals' production of pitch? Well, we used to think some people, many archaeologists, believed that they meant that Neanderthals had advanced cognition. Those were the implications that we thought there were. But this evidence, this experiment, new information, indicates that the implication is actually that maybe it was an accident. So we are being provided with experimental evidence indicating that the implication of Neanderthals' production of pitch are that it was accidental, not that it was sophisticated like we previously thought. Bam! Answer choice B. Nasty. So be careful, right? With primary purpose, we need to be focused both on the purpose, so the verb, right? We need to make sure that we are going far enough, but not too far, but also the topic. We don't want to be too broad. We don't want to be too narrow. We need to be dead on with both the verb and the noun. Okay, this one's a little bit easier, and I think this one follows nicely from the previous one. 1 minute, answer in the chat. answers in the chat. Okay, so this one, which of the following best describes the relationship of the second paragraph to the first? We have kind of a structure and purpose question. So rather than looking at the purpose of the whole passage, we are looking at the purpose of the paragraphs in relationship to each other. Oh, we're doing a lot better with this one. So we can use our information from our read of the passage to figure out what do we think that relationship is. Well, we know, starting with a however, right, that the second paragraph was in contrast to the first paragraph. The first paragraph said, hey, maybe they are significantly cognitively advanced. The second paragraph says, actually, this pitch production evidence is not good evidence for you guys. It does not support it. So we're going into our answer choices with that knowledge that it is in contrast and is specifically digging into pitch production. Okay. Answer choice A, the second paragraph explains in detail an observed phenomenon introduced in the first paragraph. Where's the contrast? Where's the contrast, right? It starts with a however. It explicitly goes against that conclusion. That needs to be in this answer. It's not here. The second paragraph offers experimental evidence, okay, indicating that an assertion mentioned in the first paragraph, okay, is unquestionable. What? That's the opposite of what we're looking at. If this was questionable, this would be a great answer, but it's not what it says. Okay. The second paragraph presents a convincing challenge of the validity of evidence discussed in the first paragraph. Now, we might be looking at this one and going, maybe, yeah, right? Because we're looking at the evidence about the pitch and we're challenging it. Yeah, okay. So let's give this one a maybe. And let's look at D. The second paragraph indicates that the significance of a development mentioned in the first paragraph has been misjudged. Well, that one's good too, right? Because that actually reminds me a lot of what was it? The implications are different from the previous right answer, right? That was the right answer on the previous one, that the implications of pitch production were different. So the significance of that development has been misjudged. This one's actually dead on, right? The significance of pitch production was misjudged to have been evidence of sufficient cognition. Actually, it could have been accidental. So I think this one is my correct answer, which must mean C is wrong, but why? Oh, and if you're going, we had 3 paragraphs, a reminder that there was a part 1 and 2 of paragraph 2. That was a little confusing. Sorry about that. Just didn't all fit on a slide. So why is C wrong? It's this word validity. And this one, in the absence of D, C is pretty convincing. But when we look at D, C becomes less convincing because significance is right? The evidence is true. They did produce pitch. They did produce tools. It's just that we can't draw the conclusion that they were advanced because of it. That evidence is valid. It's true. They did it. But maybe they did it by accident. It didn't require advanced cognition. Blamp. So the answer is not C because we're not questioning the validity. So if you are a maybe on an answer choice, you don't need to pick it right away. Look at the other ones and then compare them to each other. We want to pick the strongest one. All right. And then finally, E, the second paragraph presents examples of a type of process mentioned in the first paragraph. I mean, one, it doesn't really. It goes into one process, but also this is totally missing the contrast. It's just pretty off, and it's a pretty superficial read of the passage. So the answer is not E, it is D. Okay. Last one. This is the easiest one of the bunch. 1 minute, give it a go, and then we'll talk about it. We're at a minute. Answers in the chat. Okay, and we'll do this one relatively quickly. The author mentions Neanderthals' routine use of fire, most probably in order to. So this is, again, purpose, but it's a purpose of a very small piece of information. Okay. If I back up really quickly, we actually pulled out this word routine while we were reading the passage. That was something we noticed. It was in our last sentence. Since Neanderthals' routine use of fire likely commonly involved birch bark, and we were using this with simple as well to basically indicate this was something that happened a lot, right? And it was something that they used all the time. It was not very hard, and their use of fire with birch bark allowed them to produce pitch, which means it was not evidence that they were significantly cognitively advanced. So why do we bring up routine use of fire? Well, here, why we called it out was because it was part of this conclusion that they are not significantly cognitively advanced. So just by proximity to the conclusion, we can tell that that's probably what it's for, is to support that conclusion that it was an accident. Okay, so going into our answer choices, show that many archaeologists' conclusion that the use of fire by Neanderthals was unusual is inaccurate. Is that the conclusion? That their use of fire was unusual? No, they were talking about pitch production, right? This is, if we read this not very carefully, we might go, hey, yeah, their conclusion that they are super advanced is not accurate if we're looking at pitch production specifically. But this is not correct. We are only bringing up fire in the context of pitch production, not A. Identify a step involved in Neanderthals' development of a sophisticated method of heating bark to produce pitch without burning the pitch. No, it's supporting a conclusion. Identify a step is not strong enough. It's not forceful enough. It's not purposeful enough. Not correct. Provide an example of a discovery indicating that Neanderthals were as cognitively advanced as ancestors of, wait, what? They were as cognitively advanced as ancestors of modern humans? No, this is the opposite. Again, now maybe someone's making a reach and saying that fire is a discovery that makes them cognitively advanced, and potentially in another passage, sure. But in this passage, fire is only being mentioned in the context of pitch production, which is specifically saying, no, maybe they aren't as cognitively advanced. Not correct. Show that the material most commonly used in fires by Neanderthals was birch bark. Superficial read. That's not the purpose. It's about the conclusion. So our answer must be E, but E is kind of difficult to read. So let's break this one together. Suggest that claiming that development of a method of pitch oh my goodness, I can't even read it. Pitch production by Neanderthals was other than unintentional is unjustified. Okay, let's take this middle chunk. Development of a method of pitch production by Neanderthals was other than unintentional. So other than unintentional means intentional. So claiming that development of pitch production was intentional is unjustified. Okay, so if it's unjustified, they're saying it is not intentional. So breaking this answer choice down, it is saying that we are suggesting that pitch production was not intentional. Yes, that is why we're doing it. They're saying they use fire a lot, which means it could be accidental or not intentional. Oftentimes, the right answers, like we saw earlier with that one where it was the ratios, they're really kind of hard to parse, right? And we saw that with our first primary purpose question as well. So if you see an answer that like makes your brain hurt, you don't have to do it right away. You can look at the other ones. This one we could get to by process of elimination. But if it makes your brain hurt, that might be an indication that maybe it's right. Maybe it's not. But usually when things are so confusing, it's on purpose to mislead you and to confuse you. And that is what's going on with this one. Okay, that is all 6 of our questions. So quick takeaways, and then I'll show a bonus question, and then I'll take any questions Takeaways on this one. Why do test takers get these wrong? They get them wrong because they have inadequately analyzed the question stem. They don't really get what they're being asked for. Is this a premise? Or sorry, is this a strengthen or is this an inference, right? How do these relate? Is this the second paragraph to the first or the first to the second? That's a classic wrong answer. Inadequate analysis of the passage, right? And this is true with both critical reasoning and reading comprehension. If we have not spent enough time truly understanding what's going on in the passage, we're going to struggle with the answer choices. And a classic one we saw today was with imprecise language, right? If we're not really dead on sure what the language in our passage is, we're going to struggle when slightly different language comes up in the answer choices. And same thing with our Neanderthals passage. Having a really good understanding of the structure going in really helps us with the answer choices, with the questions. And then finally, inadequate analysis of the answer choices. Often we breeze past the right answer because we don't want to deal with it. Or we pick a wrong answer because we haven't read it very carefully. It's often little words, little things that are too extreme or too strong, or a single word that makes it the opposite that make an answer choice wrong. So we need to be careful at every step. I find that a lot of people breeze through things quickly, trying to save time. If you take your time and are intentional, generally it saves time. So how do we get them right? Carefully identify the question type, actively process the passage, and meticulously assess the answer choices. Thanks for sticking around late with me today. This was fun. I have a bonus question. It is critical reasoning. I'm going to pop it up on the screen. If you want to try this one, you can. You can take a screenshot or you can come back to the recording once it's posted. This one's also in the top 20, but this is just a little bonus. So this is here on the recording, or you can take a screenshot. I'm going to go back to the question screen, so grab this if you need it. And I will take any questions that we have. Let me know in the chat if you have any questions, and I'll answer those now. If you're headed out, thank you so much for being here. This was fun. The quant session that we previously did, solving 9 hard quant questions, that is in the description, that link. You can find that there. And then we have a solving some number of hard data insights questions coming up on June 4th. So come see me then. It's another Thursday. All right, questions in the chat if you got them. There was a question earlier that I did want to address, just because I thought it was kind of a fun one. I saw someone mention, could we apply the same logic that we applied in E to C? So right in E, we said, no people who are identical twins share the same thumbprint with their twins. And the reason that we eliminated that one is that there could be identical twins who have not tried to unlock the phones. In C, notice that we're not talking about identical twins in general. We are talking about identical twins who have gained unauthorized access. So this means these are identical twins who have tried to unlock the phones. We know that no identical twins have succeeded in unlocking the phones. So if you have gained unauthorized access, that means you have not succeeded in unlocking the phones. E, the issue is with people who have not touched the phones. They have not tried to unlock, they have not tried to gain unauthorized access. So this one's really, really tricky, but we're dealing with a subgroup, twins who've tried, versus the broader group, twins who haven't tried. This one's kind of fun. All right, back to questions. How to manage time. How to manage time required for analysis. So I was kind of getting at this, but it's really the idea of investing time to save time. And it's finding out where your time is going to be best spent and finding out where your time is not best spent. Because I find that a lot of people are wasting time because they're not investing up front. So they read the passage, but they read it really fast. They're not pausing to process. They're just going, and then they get to the end of the passage and then they go, I didn't get that. I got to read it again. So then they read it again, or they read paragraphs over and over, or they read sentences over and over because they're like, what? I don't understand it. Whereas if they just stopped, as they were getting new information and processed as they went, they would have a much better understanding. Same thing with the question. If you don't adequately identify the question type, you're not going to know what to do in your answer choices. And then similarly, I find a lot of people get stuck on a single answer choice, and then either they just eliminate it and move on because they don't get it, or they spend so long with that answer choice that they don't even look at the other ones. If you're looking at an answer choice and you're like, give it a maybe. All right, don't rule it out, give it a maybe. And then hit your other answer choices. And you might get one that is yes, obviously right, or maybe all the other four are obviously wrong, or maybe a little bit of time spent away will unlock something about the problem, and you can come back and you'll have a better chance of attacking it. So all of this to say, I find that a lot of time management is actually spending your time on the stuff that's going to save you the time. Hopefully that's helpful. The other thing, though, is knowing when to give up, right? If you are just reading something over and over and over, or you've done all the good stuff and you're like, I truly don't understand this, or you go do your pass of the answer choices and you're like, I don't understand any of them, move on. Sacrifice the question. You are going to miss questions on test day. You should. You're unlikely to get it right if you're at that point. If you've done all the right stuff and you're lost, you're probably not going to get it right. Don't waste time getting it wrong. Try something else that you're more likely to get right. Hopefully that helps. And then a similar answer to the question, how to reduce time while solving RC passages. I've recently started preparing for GMAT. What should I be studying first to strengthen my foundation for all three sections? So funny. I actually did a panel with GMAT Club on this topic pretty recently. It's in the videos for GMAT Club. I did it with a bunch of other prep experts from other test prep companies. But our general consensus is that don't start with data insights. Start with quant or verbal, maybe alternate between the two, do a little bit of quant, a little bit of verbal, and then kind of build your foundation there, and then move on to data insights, because data insights is going to build on your foundation of quant and verbal skills. It's going to combine them and then add on top of it data presentation. So data insights is the more advanced section. That's not to say don't study for it. Absolutely do, but get your foundation of quant and verbal first. Would I take notes? Yeah, I would. I specifically like to do a brief little summary at the end of paragraphs, and then I do my summary at the end of the passage. And then honestly, a thing that I do that's kind of goofy is I kind of pretend like I am annotating the passage, and like I will underline on my piece of paper, like I'm underlining the word however, or like I'll, do something to like, okay, stop. It's the end of a sentence. And that just that kind of like physical action helps with the thinking process. It's kind of goofy, but it does help. And then the other thing that I like to do, on my scratch paper is I have columns A, B, C, D, and E, and then I make those long columns, and then for every question I go across and I do either eliminate or give it a maybe or, circle or whatever, and that just helps me know which answer choices I've dealt with and which ones I haven't. So I really recommend that on your scratch paper. Oh, quant session, already had it. Link in the description. And then one more question. Any suggestions for books, resources, exercises that I should practice from? I mean, I'm here representing Target Test Prep, so Target Test Prep. There's also a lot of really good free stuff if you're not interested in buying the program yet, or you can do the free trial for 5 days to try it out. But there's the blog, there's the YouTube channel. I'm posting there every Wednesdays. I highly recommend checking that out. There's a ton of great stuff on GMAT Club here. But the big thing that I will recommend, I've been talking about this a lot lately, and I'll talk about it again here, buy the official practice tests. A lot of people don't use all 6 of them. They are the best. The best thing out there is the official practice test. So I highly recommend, if you're going to invest in one thing, official practice tests, just make sure to take them at a good time in your study. I have some videos on that on the Target Test Prep GMAT channel that I recommend checking out. Okay, I think this might be my last question. Oh, so the quant was a live session. but it's over. So it's a recording of a live session. So you can watch that and follow along with it. Link is in the description. The live data insight section is still to come. That's on June 4th. Okay. How to improve data sufficiency and TPA two-part analysis. Well, I would say come to my session on June 4th. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. There's also a video on the Target Test Prep channel that I did that's 6 underrated tips for data insights. I think it's 6. I recommend that one. There's also a really good video from Julia on our channel about data insights tips. I'll talk about data sufficiency. Biggest things with data sufficiency, know your answer choices inside and out, and then really understand the difference between the 2 types of sufficiency. So there's value sufficiency and then there's yes, no sufficiency. Know those really, really well. Make sure that you're evaluating your statements one at a time. Do not bring them together until you have separately evaluated them. You do not have to evaluate them in order. You can start with statement 2 first. That's one of my 6 tips. And then once you're past that, you can get into kind of an advanced thing, which is knowing the different forms that data sufficiency answers take. You know, there is the different traps take. There are it seems like you need both statements when actually you only need one statement. There's it seems like you can solve with both statements, but actually you can't solve with any of the statements. You know, there's a lot of different forms, or it seems like both statements are identical, but actually they're slightly different. You know, there's all sorts of common paradigms isn't the right word I'm looking for, but there are common forms of data sufficiency questions, and you can if you can identify them, it really, really helps to help avoid the traps that they set up. That's my best tip for data sufficiency. For 2-part analysis, that one's pretty tough too. I'd say come to my session and we'll talk more about it. A lot of word problems and data sufficiency, which consumes time. My tip for data sufficiency, or sorry, not data sufficiency, but word problems, whether they're in quant or data sufficiency, is the same as my tip for verbal, which is read it slowly. Stop and process at every new piece of information. Punctuation can be a good cue to stop and write it down. You are going to be building a table or building an equation or setting variables or whatever as you read. Don't read the question 5 times. Read it 1 time. Read it really, really well. And I find that if I do that, I know where I'm going at the end of the question, which I might not have if I just read it all the way through. So treat word problems like you treat verbal questions. Read them actively. That's my tip. Yeah, it is confusing, huh? Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get going. But again, please join me on June 4th for our session on data insights. But again, thanks so much. Hopefully you enjoyed the session on quant, linked in the description. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.